Hey guys, we're back at the workbench. Why do I blank every time the camera starts rolling? I guess so that I'll have good outtakes. Hey guys, we're back at the workbench. A little bit of a set update. This is about as clean as the workbench will ever be. And we have some more topics. So I hope you're excited. Today, we're going to film an update to the very first workbench video. If you've seen it, you may recall that was a rant about Sanyo and Lasco. And I think that we've established via that video and the various sources that went into it that fans that were sold by Lasco metal products out of Pennsylvania should be referred to as Lasco unless they were relabeled and sold under another name for Sears, Walmart, etc. But we haven't really talked that much about the fan offerings from Sanyo and Lasco and the history of those two companies. So I've got some notes here. Let's take a look. So first we're going to start with Sanyo. So Sanyo has a 1975 patent for the three-blade, no switch housing industrial with the plastic motor casing, the ceramic or whatever the material is, top motor casing, and the Caribbean Breeze style canopies. That's from 1975. We've seen those with 4 blades. I think we've seen them with 3 as well. In that same patent, it references the 3-blade version with the switch housing and the speed counter, and then a version I've never seen before, which is 3-blade with the pull cord out the center but no switch housing. It's just a whole one-piece motor housing and the pull chain comes out of the center. That's 1975. So we're not exactly sure when they first started being sold in the U.S., but the first appearance of them in U.S. promotional literature is 1979. In 1979, the 3-blade version with the pull cord shows up for sale in the U.S., as well as the more residential versions, which have the kind of rounded bottom and the pull cord out at the side, and they're theoretically light adaptable. The 36-inch one has 3 blades. The 48-inch one has 4. Again, they're all metal. Some of them have gold pin striping. The blades are metal. Some of them have fake wood. There's no brass plating. And the only Dayton Lasco, as we call it, styled fan to show up with a Sanyo name is the 3-bladed version. The 4-bladed version always shows up as Lasco, but we'll get it, or Lasco related, but we'll get into that later. So the last year that this line of fans shows up, I think I missed a note here because in 1981 they introduced more decorative versions that have fake gold details and fake stencil. Well, not really fake stencil, but painted on stencil on metal blades. But again, they are all there's no brass plating, there's no wood, it's all gold painted. I just want to make sure that I have that year right because apparently I left that out of my notes. No, I was incorrect. You know what? We're going to start this over. I'm going to fix the notes. Hey guys, we're back at the workbench. As you can see, I've done a little organizing and set update. This is as clean as I ever intend to have the workbench, so don't ever expect it cleaner than this. We've changed the set a little bit, which there have been some requests for, so I hope you like it. Today we're going to film an update to my first video. My first video was a rant about Lasco and Sanyo and how to refer to fans that were essentially branded by Lasco but had Sanyo motors. I think we've fully established that if it came through the Lasco plant in Pennsylvania, then it is a Lasco, and also could have been relabeled House Beautiful, Sears Turn of the Century, etc. But Sanyo labeled fans will all say Sanyo on them. So we've established that, but we didn't really talk much about the history of Lasco and Sanyo and the different models and the changes throughout the years. So instead of a rant, today is going to be an informative video. So let's start with Sanyo. The earliest we see of Sanyo ceiling fans is in 1975. They apply for a patent, And the primary fan in the patent is a 3-bladed industrial that uses the same motor shape as the Dayton Lascos, but it's just a smooth bottom. We've seen this exact fan with 4 blades, but this is the 3-blade version. The canopies are kind of Caribbean breeze-ish. And also referenced in that patent is the 3-blade version with the Dayton Lasco style switch housing, pull cord, speed counter, etc. And then also in that patent... Okay, time for another outtake. Hey guys, welcome back to the Workbench. So, today we're going to talk about Lasco and Sanyo. Now you might be saying, we've already talked about Lasco and Sanyo, and that's true. I did a very powerful and influential rant about what we should refer to fans that come through the Lasco Metal Products plant in Pennsylvania, even if some parts, namely the motor, were manufactured by Sanyo. But we didn't really talk about the history of Lasco and Sanyo and the changes throughout the years and the different products they sold and things like that. So today's going to be a history lecture. Before I forget, I will want to say at the top that one of the things that we have discovered is that if it is a Sanyo fan and all the parts were made by Sanyo and it was sold as a Sanyo, it will say Sanyo somewhere visible on the fan. Usually on the lower canopy, but sometimes other places. So again, if it is a Sanyo, it will say Sanyo. If it does not say Sanyo, then assume it was sold through Lasco or something similar. So let's get into it. We're going to start with Sanyo. So Sanyo has a 1975 patent for a 3-bladed industrial with no switch housing. We've seen the 4-bladed version a lot. It has the the smooth plastic bottom. It's kind of shaped like a Dayton Lasco motor. It's got the kind of Caribbean breeze style conical canopies. I think we've seen them with 3 blades. We've definitely seen them with 4. That design was patented in 1975, and then also referenced in the patent is the 3-blade version with the switch housing, the pull cord, and the speed counter, and a version I've never seen before, which has the same round motor with the pull cord out of the center, but no switch housing, just all one piece. So that was in 1975. Now, the first time Sanyo ceiling fans actually show up for sale in the United States as Sanyo, and again, we'll talk about Lasco and whatnot a little later. First time they show up for sale in the United States is 1979. In 1979, they offer variations on 3 fans. One is the 3-blade with the switch housing and the pull cord out the center, the essentially 3-blade Dayton Lasco style. The second is a 36-inch more residential fan. It's 3 metal blades. It's got kind of the rounded bottom, pull cord out the side. It's light adaptable. All of these are offered with fake wood if it's in brown or white. And then the 48-inch version of that, which is just 4 metal blades, rounded bottom, pull cord out the side, light adaptable. That's 1979. Now, in 1980 through 1983, they introduced some more decorative models. But again, everything that comes straight from Sanyo does not have any wood or brass. It is all metal blades, some with fake wood grain, some with stencil. They had gold stencil for some of them. Some of them have gold pinstriping on the motors, and they even had an ornate version that had kind of gold molded plastic on the motor. But there was no brass plating at the Sanyo plant, and there was no wood. So that is 1980 through 83. In 83, Sanyo fans disappear from the U.S. marketplace. In 1985, they reappear, but as relabeled Panasonics. Panasonics are sold in the U.S. Relabeled as Sanyo in 1985. I don't know what the relationship is with Sanyo and Panasonic, but I have heard from industry sources that they were in some way or at some time the same company. We obviously know that Panasonic and Sanyo, as far as electronics manufacturers, are not the same, but maybe they shared fan manufacturing, or I don't know the details here. All I can tell you is that in 1985 in the U.S., they show up as like the King Arthur and I can't remember all of the Panasonic model names, but they show up in the U.S. as those, but labeled Sanyo. Also in 1985, Sanyo fans show up in Canada, and it's a model that I've only seen in Canada. It's got kind of a vaguely 1895-ish style. They're often with cane, a lot of plastic parts. They are wood blades, and they did offer brass. That's 1985 only. And then after 1985, there are no references to Sanyo in the U.S. ceiling fan market. Okay, So that's Sanyo as Sanyo. Now let's talk about Lasco, which, as we know, relabeled wholly made fans from Sanyo, the Dayton Lascos, which, were pretty much entirely a Sanyo product, but it's pretty clear that the Lasco version spec'd 4 blades and spec'd the smaller size, because Sanyo never offered those as a Sanyo product, and they don't appear in any of their patents or anything like that. So the 4-blade version with 2 sizes was a Lasco specification. They first show up advertised in 1979 under the Galaxy model name, but they also show up in Granger in 1978 as their house brand fan. So I have a suspicion that they showed up in, I don't have any earlier Granger books, I have a suspicion that they showed up in Granger as early as 76. Because I believe we've seen them in the U.S. as early as 76, and the earliest ones had those conical Caribbean Breeze shaped canopies, but they don't show up sold as Lasco, so I'm assuming they were sold as Dayton. But in 1979, outside of Granger and Dayton, they were sold as Galaxy. So, and that's pretty much all they sold in 79 and 81. Then in 81, Lasco, so in other words, 79, 81, Lasco is having Sanyo fans made to their specs and rebranding them. In 81, Lasco starts making their own fan parts. They introduce wood blades and brass housings. No, sorry, 81 is wood blades, and you get those plastic housings with the cane and the stencil, and they're 48-inch and they're kind of kludgy looking. That comes in 81. 82 is when they start introducing brass parts. You might have seen those exact same 48-inch fans with the cane and stencil, but they have like a brass cover that goes on the bottom. They're still a 48-inch only at this point. There are no Dayton Lascos sold as the Lasco or Galaxy name by 82. By 82, they are now a Granger exclusive. And the other thing that's interesting to point out in 82 is that a lot of the same retailers that sold Sanyo also sold Lasco. So clearly they used a lot of the same supply chain. The other thing about 82 is that they also introduced the fancier motor. So the 52-inch version with the fancier motor. So the most common one is the Sears one, which is interesting because it doesn't show up in any of the Sears catalogs. So I don't know if it was a Sears store-only item, or maybe it was like a wish book item or something that didn't appear in their regular catalogs. But I've got a bunch of them. I hung 2 and 12 wings. People remember them from there. They've got the ornate bottom plate and 52-inch blades. There's also the version that's plain, that's not ornate, where if you take that ornate cover off, it's got kind of like builder vents. That motor housing style with both the ornate and the builder vents was introduced in 82. The 52-inch blades were introduced in 82. By 83, all Lasco branded fans are now clearance closeout, and it's the last year they ever used the Galaxy name. So 83, it looks like Lasco's getting rid of their ceiling fan line. And then in 84 is when Lasco makes their first ceiling fan for Sears, and there are no fans sold under the Lasco name. They've discontinued all the import looking top mount type stuff, and in 84 they're only making fans for Sears. And now we're going to talk about that in a second, because there is an exception to that specifically for Sears, but we haven't gotten to Sears yet. So in 85, Lasco fans reappear, but again, they're on clearance and closeout sales. So what it seems like is some distributors and some resellers just happen to have some old stock. In 1986 is when the American Classic was introduced, which is I would call it the Walmart version of the Sears turn of the century, but in reality, I think it was sold places other than just Walmart. But it's that style of fan that we know as the Walmart Lasco. It's got essentially the same motor housing style as the turn of the century, but the vents are different, a few other details are different. That was introduced in 86. In 87, Lasco patented the contemporary spinner, which is the little Walmart spinner. Again, it was sold other places, but we know it as the little Walmart spinner that looks very much like a Dayton Lasco, but in a 36-inch residential version. It's very interesting. That was patented by Lasco. It was presumably made by Sanyo, but the design came from Lasco. It really seems like what they did is they, looked at a date in Lasco and said, okay, how can we make this a little more updated for the current market? And then Lasco patented that design, not Sanyo. So, and again, Sanyo had the patent for the original Dayton Lasco style. So that was that was patented in '87. I don't know when it showed up. It did not show up for sale in '87. We'll get to that when we know when it showed up for sale at Sears. We'll get to that when we get to the Sears section. I'm just looking at my notes to see if I have anything. I do not have anything. Okay, it shows up in 1990 at Sears and Walmart. So we'll get to the Sears section in a minute. But it's interesting. It was probably for sale by '88, but it really doesn't start to become popular until 1990. Okay, so that was patented in '87. '88 is the last year that that Lasco makes fans for Sears, other than that little spinner. We'll get to that in a second. And then, as we know, Lasco continued to sell fans under their own name and later in the House Beautiful name through Walmart and other retailers until the late 90s. I don't have the exact year. I believe it was like 98, 99. So that's Lasco fans sold as Lasco. Now, the last thing we're going to touch on is Lasco fans sold at Sears. Now, the Sears catalogs are widely available. I have them in a slideshow. I have them on Dan Spiffy Newman Ceiling Fans on Facebook. So this is all information you can get from the Sears catalogs, but I'm going to say it here just in case you're interested. So, 1984 was the first year of Lasco fans at Sears. Up until that point, it was pretty much all Emerson with a few other random rare models thrown in. The first model to be introduced at Sears was the ornate variable speed turn of the century, which is what I think of when I think of a Sears Lasco. We've videoed several on this channel. I've seen a ton of them as a kid. I love them. They're great fans. They later came with a remote, and we'll get to that. Sears also offered, as their budget fan, a Lasco 3-blade top mount that used that same motor housing I was talking about earlier that I said was discontinued by '83 with the builder vents. They repurposed that into like a small, same, the 52-inch size motor housing, but then with just 3 36-inch blades, single speed, and that was introduced at Sears in '84 as well. That came in white and brown. Very few of those have turned up, and for good reason. They're hideous. But that was the second fan introduced at Sears via Lasco. In '85, they introduced that weird ornate turn of the century that's kind of a copy of like that ornate GE that the Emerson is also copying. Just it's got a weird kind of tapered motor housing. That showed up in '85, as well as the 4-speed plain turn of the century in oh no, I missed it. Sorry, we're not gonna do an outtake. We're just gonna edit it right here. Edit. So no, because I coughed earlier. This will be a really long outtake. We're gonna do this again. Almost made it. I'm so close to the end. Hey guys, welcome back to the Workbench. You see we've made a few changes. This is probably the cleanest you'll ever see the Workbench. I got a frog in my throat. Hey guys, welcome back to the Workbench. That sounded weird. Hey guys, welcome back to the Workbench. As you can see, we've made some changes. This is the cleanest you'll ever see the Workbench. So, today we're going to do an update to our first Workbench video. As you may recall, that was a rant about Sanyo and Lasco. And I'd like to think we've established that if a fan was sold through Lasco Metal Products of Pennsylvania, then it is in fact a Lasco. And another thing I'll add right now that we'll get into a little more later is that if a fan was sold as Sanyo, it will say Sanyo on it, usually on the lower canopy. So hopefully we've established that. But one of the things we didn't talk about was the history of Lasco and Sanyo and the changes over the years and various models and things like that. So let's get into it. So let's start with Sanyo, because they are the originator. Sanyo has a patent for the 3-blade no switch housing industrial. It's similar to a Dayton Lasco. I know we've seen a lot of 4-blade versions, and I think we've seen a few 3-blade versions, but it's just a round motor with a plastic bottom, cylindrical Caribbean Breeze stipe. Hey guys, welcome back to the Workbench. As you can see, we've made a few updates. This is probably the cleanest you'll ever see the Workbench. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that we started this series with, which is Lasco and Sanyo. I hope that we've established that any fan that goes through the Lasco Metal Products plant in Pennsylvania is in fact a Lasco. And the other thing that I'll add right now is that if it was sold in the US as a Sanyo product, it will say Sanyo, usually on the lower canopy. But we haven't really talked much about Lasco and Sanyo and the history of the companies and the fans they offered and things like that, so let's get into it. Let's start with Sanyo. Sanyo actually has one of the earliest vintage ceiling fan patents that I could find, at least. They might be the first post-1950s company to patent a ceiling fan in the US. And the patent is from 1975, and it shows a fan with basically the Dayton Lasco style motor housing, but smooth on the bottom, no switch housing, 3 blades, and the cylindrical Caribbean Breeze style canopies. I know we've seen a lot of these with 4 blades. I think we've seen them with 3 blades, but they're just a basic industrial Sanyo style. Also in that patent, they reference the more recognized Sanyo with the 3 blades and the Dayton Lasco style with the switch housing and the pull cord and the speed counter. And then also they reference in the patent a fan I've never seen before, which is basically the same, but it doesn't have a separate switch housing. It's all one-piece motor housing, or bottom of the motor housing, and the pull cord comes right out the center. I've never seen that before. Maybe they never even made it. Some things are patented or referenced in a patent and never put into production. So that's 1975. So the first time that Sanyo branded ceiling fans show up in the US is 1979. And in 1979, they are 3-blade and 4-blade metal bladed. The 3-blade is the 36-inch Hey guys, welcome back to the Workbench. I've got an itch. I thought I was going to be able to do it today without any outtakes, and there have been so many outtakes. Hey guys, welcome back to the Workbench. I completely forgot what I was going to say after that.